We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard.
Para algo tan grandioso, el silencio simplemente no sirve.
如果我们的眼睛被失去所带来的泪水所充满，
残されたものの美しさを見ることができなくなるかもしれません。
In diesen unsicheren Zeiten, wer wird die gute Nachricht hören, wenn wir nicht sprechen?
Ni nani atakayesikia habari njema ikiwa sisi hatusemi?
We all stand together for our brothers and sisters, for our children, for our families.
We need to be people that do as Jesus did. Push out into the deep. Reach out to others that need our help.
Today, the voices that must be heard is not always the loudest.
We stand united with our brothers and sisters.
Con fede ci uniamo ai nostri fratelli, alle nostre sorelle.
بالإيمان نقف متحدين مع إخوتنا وأخواتنا.
احنا نعيش معهم. احنا نبكي معهم.
Ami hamna sosire, ami tani sosire.
We must tell of the great things that happen when people know that God loves them.
We need to continually reach out to one another, to break down barriers, to welcome the stranger, and to offer a helping hand when our brother or sister is in need.
For we are missionary, all of us.
Karena kita adalah misionaris.
Dahil tayo'y mga misyonero.
For we are missionaries.
Allá misionario.
Y es que somos misioneros y estamos todavía aquí.
We are still here and we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard.
We are delighted that so many of you are joining us this evening, especially from around and beyond the diocese. Especially shout out to our neighbouring diocese of Cork and Ross and the diocese of Kildare and Lyme. Wherever you are joining us from, you are all very welcome. My thanks indeed to Missio Ireland for the video played as we signed in. My name is Rupert, and I am a member of the Diocesan Justice and Peace. Before we continue, I will call on Des Bailey, our colleague in the JPIC, to lead us in the opening prayer.
We cannot remain silent. Message of Pope Francis for World Mission Day 2021. What have we seen and heard? Jesus born as one of us, walking with us, loving us. The apostles saw Jesus curing the sick, eating with sinners, giving food to the hungry, near to the outcast, unclean and needy, and were amazed and full of joy and gratitude. Let us too join Jesus' mission by being open to embrace others, everyone, everywhere, sowing seeds, but whose fruit we may never see, aware of the Lord's active presence in our hearts, impelling us to mission. And may Christ's compassionate love touch our hearts and make us all true missionary disciples.
Prayer.
Amen.
As we know, this month we are celebrating Mission Month, and Sunday is World Mission Sunday. And the message, as you have seen, for this month is, or for Mission Month is, we cannot remain silent and we cannot but speak about the things that we have seen and heard. And to help us focus on our mission webinar this evening, we have three wonderful speakers who are passionate about what they do, and they will share with us their stories shortly. So first we have Sister Orla Tracy, who is a Loreto sister, no stranger to Kerry and Tralee. She works in South Sudan. And Father Tim Galvin is a St. Patrick's Missionary Kiltegan priest who hails from the parish of Brosna and also works in South Sudan. And we have Julianne Moran, who works with Missio Ireland. And she will tell us about Missio, what her role is, and how we can support the work of Missio, and I will introduce them shortly. And as you listen to our three speakers, you may wish to raise a question, or you may wish to make a comment. You can speak it loud, or you can register it in the Q&A box, which is at the center of the bottom of your webinar screen. And before we finish, Des Bailey, our diocesan pastoral worker, will collate them for our speakers. So we have asked our presenters as well to try and have their presentations within 12 minutes. And I know how difficult that may be for them in the circumstances. So our first speaker is Sister Orla Tracy. And Orla is no stranger to Kerry or Tralee. At the age of 6, she moved with her family to Bray, County Wicklow, and she schooled in the Loreto College in Bray. And after that, she graduated to Mater Dei, and subsequently she taught in 4 secondary schools, 2 girls' schools and 2 boys' schools. And during that time, she reflected very deeply on her future as a young woman. And she joined the Loreto Sisters, and she made final commitment in 2005. And within 1 year, in 2006, Orla volunteered with 2 of her colleagues for a new mission in Sudan. And this was as a result of an invitation from the Bishop of Rumbek to the Loreto Sisters to establish a school for girls. So Orla wasted no time. She made the courageous decision and took a step for a very challenging and sometimes dangerous mission. So South Sudan was established as an independent autonomous state in 2011. And Orla spent 15 years in South Sudan, sharing in the lives of the people as their nation became independent and an autonomous state. But unfortunately, civil war broke out 2 years later in 2013. So dealing with political unrest and conflict is part of everyday life for Orla. So as a teacher, principal, she oversaw the development and growth of the girls' secondary school. And today, I gather there are close to 400 girls living and schooling in Loreto or Rumbek. The first challenge Orla met was forced marriages, which is a common thing in some African countries. And she came up with a novel idea of forming a contract, of insisting that the parents and the chief or whatever of the local village sign a contract that they would not disturb the education of the girls during their school period. Orla also has overseen or oversees the building and development of the Loreto Primary School, which has over 1,000 pupils. There's also a healthcare center, agricultural training projects in the compound, and a mother and babies feeding program. So can you imagine the impact and the lives of so many people resulting from her leadership skills? She is now director of the campus. And in recognition of her work over that 15 years, she has received 3 major awards. The U of Flaherty International Humanitarian Award, which she received here in Killarney, I think in 2017. Later, she received the US Secretary of State International Women of Courage Award. And then more recently, the DCU Alumni Award of Outstanding Achievement for Societal Impact. It's a long way from those early years in Tralee to the great strides that she is making in South Sudan. So it's my pleasure to introduce Orla.
Good evening, and thank you, Rupert, for the introduction. It's great to be back in, as you say, to be back in Tralee, or to be back in Kerry with you all today. I'm actually in Bray this evening, County Wicklow, so I'm not too far away from you all. I've prepared a small presentation, maybe just to help us to share some of these stories as well as we go through. I hope you can all see them. Technology, Father Tim will tell you, technology and South Sudan don't go hand in hand. So while South Sudan has many challenges, we thankfully don't have the problem of technology that you people have in this world. I think, as brother has said, I'm a Loreto sister. I've been a Loreto sister for 24 years. And for 15 of those years, I've been living in South Sudan, where I'm still living. The theme this year for a mission is we cannot but speak about what we have seen and heard. Father Tim and myself, we are only 9 Irish missionaries in South Sudan, but nicely, Father Tim and myself happen to be home together, and we're able to share with you some of the reality of mission life in South Sudan. So what we'll do for the presentation is I'll give you some of the context and maybe some of our stories, and I know Father Tim will also add to some of the experiences of life in South Sudan as well. I think the message for me this year is about being hopeful followers of Jesus, and also being aware of what it means to follow Jesus. That it's a message that can often bring persecution. It's a message that can also bring challenges if we are true disciples. And this is not just for South Sudan. We would say this is for the world as well. So my first picture is just the story of hope. We have a girls' boarding secondary school. Girls, when we arrived in South Sudan, in the diocese that we're in, there were 10 girls in secondary school. Over the last 15 years, we've seen a whole shift in the country, and we now have 340 secondary school girls in our school, and we've over 200 graduates who have gone on to university, many of them still in university. And to me, it's a real story of hope, and it's a story of what can be if people choose to continue in that way. I think, though, there is a sad reality of South Sudan. When you look at the ratings of the world, South Sudan, Afghanistan, and Syria, we often appear in the top 3 for all the worst reasons. This is us. We got, you can see, we were part of Sudan when we went. Now we're in the southern part, and we're a distinct country. Many people still refer to us as Sudan. That's the northern part. We're very proud nationalists of South Sudan. The land of South Sudan is 9 times bigger than Ireland, but we have only 12 million people. Most of us are illiterate. I'm in my 40s. There are no women in the village in 30s or 40s who are educated. And our life expectancy is between the age of 57 and 60. So unfortunately, we don't live long either. But there have been moments of joy and real hope in the country. This was 2011 when we got our independence. It was a hugely important, significant moment for the people of South Sudan when they got their independence from the North. Now, as Irish people, we understand that emotion of independence. Unfortunately for us in South Sudan, we weren't educated. We didn't have structures in place, and we didn't have the capacity to run a country. And this has been our story for the last 10 years. Our 2 leaders, Salva Kiir, who's got a lovely cowboy hat, which was given to him by George Bush, and the Vice President, Riek Machar. They come from different areas of the country, and unfortunately, the fighting started with them 2 years after our independence. Now, you might say why we fought. Well, it's the same reason everybody fights, and that's usually money and power. South Sudan has resources, we have oil, but unfortunately we don't have the capacity for the development of it. And this is one of our big challenges. And it's one of our areas where we would hope that in the future that we can develop and become more empowered within the country. As a result, the two men fell out with each other, and at December 2013, we fell into a civil war. We have been living in that state on and off for the last 8 years. As a result of the 12 million people, 8 million today are food dependent. This is a typical kitchen for us. We cook on the stones. There are just 3 stones there. And many women will tell you the stories of hunger. There are stories of women who will take the grass and cook the grass for their children. We had one mother who came to the clinic recently. She had no food and she had 3 small children, and the children were hungry. And when the children saw that the mother had not put anything on the fire, they got very upset, because not having a fire means there's no hope of food. So the mother decided to take the pot to light the fire, and she put 3 stones into the fire. And she just kept adding water until the evening fell and the children fell asleep. But the hope of the food was enough for the children to be satisfied. Obviously, it didn't satisfy their stomachs. And the next day she came to us looking for support for food. And this is one of our biggest projects for us in Loreto. We would do over 3,000 meals a day. We do over 800,000 meals a year. As I said, 2/3 of the country are food dependent. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. You and I, in Ireland, we can open the freezer, we can open the presses, the food is there, we know, we can even have a choice and a fight over what we're going to eat. But most of our people don't have food reserves, and this is one of the big problems that we have. The other big issue we have is that I think 1/3 of the country have been displaced by the fighting. This is one of our neighbors. She's about 3 kilometers from our school, and the house was burnt down in local clashes between the military and the local community. If you can see behind where she's standing, this is her home. Behind where she's standing, there's a lot of ash. That was actually her crops. If you see the field behind her, she had just harvested the wheat. She had just harvested the maize that was there. She had stocked it up in the hope that she would have food. And unfortunately, the army came and they burnt all of their homes. In fact, they didn't just burn them. They looted them first, what they could carry. And then she herself was given the match to torch her own house. This is a story echoed around the country in South Sudan. Ironically, though, from an Irish perspective, it's interesting to note that it's actually Uganda and Kenya that has taken most of our refugees. I think as Europeans and as Irish people, we often think that people struggling want to come to Europe. The South Sudanese are not coming to Europe. They're actually remaining in camps locally in neighboring countries, hoping that they can come back and that the situation will improve. Our death rate also for our children is one of the highest in the world, unfortunately. Malnutrition is one of the big reasons and malaria is another big reason. Thankfully, we have just heard in the last month that there is a vaccine coming for malaria, and we hope that that will also do something to help the younger population. But it is a very sad reality. There is one very sad statistic that I'm often reminded of. In the culture where I live of the Dinka, there is forced marriage. 11% of 15-year-old girls are forced to marry. And by the age of 18, 52% of girls are married. Now, compare that to 2% or 2% of girls who are finishing secondary school. The statistic is that more 15-year-old girls can die in childbirth than finish secondary school or go to secondary school. So that's a very sad reality for us in the country as well at the moment. But there is hope. Despite all of the challenges, people still have hope and they carry hope. This might be a photograph of an Irish school on a Friday evening, but imagine this is a photograph of our school on a Monday morning. This is how much our kids love school. They want to be educated, they want a better future, they want to learn, and they love coming to school. Now, again, the attraction of school with us is they learn, but they also get fed and they get medication as well. And there's a great joy in that and a great hope for their future as well with it. It is a changing environment. While the challenges and struggles are there, there's a sense that the parents want something different, that the parents have tasted that there is a possibility of a better life. And parents are beginning to slowly ask questions and to slowly say, what is it? And now the parents themselves are the ones coming for education. This is a health education class that we do every week with the community. But from that class, we now have 40 parents who have decided to sign up for education and who have decided that they want something different for their families. It will take a generation, it will take 2 generations for the change to come, but there is a hunger and a thirst for something different as well. And I think that hunger is always there. When you live in a place of conflict, there is always a sense of, well, when will the peace come? South Sudan is Catholic and it's Protestant. We have a lot of traditional religion as well. This was a beautiful moment for all of us in the country 2 years ago, where the Protestant church leaders and the Catholic church leaders met together with the Pope in Rome and brought our political leaders. So these 2 gentlemen on the right, you'll see standing, were the 2 I showed you earlier. They are the president and the vice president, and then a lot of the conflict would stem from the 2 of them. This was the Pope, and I think many of you know he's a man in his 80s. He has 1 hip. He struggles a lot with I think it's 1 lung and a bad hip, but he got on his hands and knees to ask the leaders of South Sudan to bring about change. This has had a lasting mark for all of us in the country. And while we still don't have peace, there is a sense of the desire for peace and the hope of peace. I think one thing that I've learned from the COVID experience, and the experts keep telling us, so long as the developing countries don't have the vaccine, we're all at risk. And I think for me, when I look at Mission Sunday this year, it's that invitation of, so long as one of us is poor or broken or is struggling, we're all affected by it as Christ followers, as Christian followers. There are signs of hope, but there's a lot of persecution that comes with it too. And I know Father Tim will talk a little bit more about that in the context of South Sudan. Lovely to be with you. And please, let us continue to pray for South Sudan and for our missionaries there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Orla, for bringing us to face with the stark reality of the conditions in which you are working, living and working. And Tim will now continue on really with what you have just said. And just to a few words about Tim, not eating too much into his time. He is a St. Patrick's missionary Kiltegan priest coming from Brosna, and he has spent 38 years in South Sudan in both pastoral and parish ministry. And some of you may have been listening to the Horizon program here in the Diocese of Kerry, which is broadcast on a Sunday morning. And Mary Fagan interviewed Tim recently, and she asked him, "Are you returning to South Sudan?" And he said, "Of course, I've got a clean bill of health, and I'll be returning after my break in early November." So, like Orla, Tim believes in education of the children, of the young people. It is, of course, their ticket out of poverty. And Tim is committed also to spreading the message of Laudato Si, the Pope's letter, and its message for our environment and our common home. And Tim, of course, makes no bones about the fact that he is a staunch Kerry man, and why not? And his greatest interest, of course, you've guessed it, is following Kerry football. And I think his nephew, Anthony Maher, played with Kerry in the recent years. So without further ado, Tim, we hand over to you.
Thank you, Rupert. Good evening, everybody. I am happy to be here this evening to speak to you about mission and the mission month of 2021. We cannot remain silent. I go back to the early 1990s. There was a civil war in Sudan between the North and the South. Father Niall Gainey from Castle Island and myself were in a town called Capoeira from 90 to 92. At that time, it was controlled by the rebels, the SPLA. We were behind rebel lines. In 1992, the government of Sudan recaptured Capoeira. We left the town before it was captured and went to Kenya. The people who were there stayed behind, one of them being a man called Pio Lokuru. Can you show the picture, please? Pio Lokuru was a catechist in the parish. We found ourselves at that time, or he found himself at that time, that there was no priest in the parish. He lived in a village about 8 kilometers away. And every Sunday, he would come to Capoeira and lead the people in prayer. The government at that time wanted to impose Islam on the South, whose people were mostly either African traditional religion or Christians. And of course, it was one of the reasons of the Civil War. The Southerners did not want Islam to be imposed on them. The government leaders in Capoeira told Pio not to gather people together for prayers on Sunday. They called him in. Pio was an old man, almost blind. Pio did not heed them. He continued coming to Capoeira every Sunday and leading the people in prayer. The government arrested him. They tortured him. They threatened to kill him. Pio's reply to them was that he had to obey God before obeying the government, who were asking him to stop his preaching and his teaching and his leading in prayer. I think his reply to the government is very similar to the theme of this year's Mission Month. We cannot remain silent. We cannot but speak about what we have seen and heard. Pio could not remain at home in his village on a Sunday morning. He had to speak out about his faith, about his belief that Jesus is the Son of God, our Savior, about the love of God for all people and the salvation that God wishes for all nations. This faith came from Pio's heart. Pio was a poor man, but he was rich in his faith and in his love of God. So he was threatened with death. The local leaders of that particular people, called the Taposa, went to the government officials and told them that if they harmed Pio, that the people would turn against them, because they regarded Pio as a holy man, as a man of God. The government released Pio, and Pio continued to gather people together for prayers on Sundays. He did not remain silent. We were able to open a new parish in 1994, southeast of Capoeira, behind rebel lines. People would prepare young people for baptism by teaching them and then lead them through the bush to a designated place where a priest would come and baptize the young people, and they would receive the sacraments of Holy Communion, etc. He was an old man, nearly blind. Yet it was no problem for him to travel 50 or 60 kilometers so that his own people would receive the sacraments. After the Comprehensive Peace Agreement of 2005, I met Pio again. I felt that I was in the presence of a man who had given his life to God and for the faith. What I took from him was, we cannot remain silent. We cannot but speak out about what we have seen and heard. Pio died in the parish of Capoeira on May the 6th, 2016. May he be at peace. We can move on to the next pictures of the sisters. The theme for this year's Mission Month is "We cannot remain silent." And we cannot remain silent now about the situation in South Sudan, especially the situation of insecurity for people. Here you see two sisters, Sister Mary in the background and Sister Regina in the foreground. They were Sacred Heart sisters from a local congregation in South Sudan. An incident took place on August the 16th along the main road linking Uganda to the South Sudan capital, Juba. This year, our diocese, called the Diocese of Torit, is celebrating a centenary of faith when the first missionaries came to our diocese. It started in a particular parish called Loa on August the 15th. A group of local sisters came to celebrate the occasion. Loa had formerly been their headquarters and their novitiate or place of training. Sister Mary and Sister Regina were Sacred Heart sisters. After a joyful celebration on Sunday, August the 15th, they began their journey to Juba on Monday morning, August the 16th. On the way, they were stopped by gunmen. These two sisters ran out of the bus to run away from the gunmen, but both were shot dead, killed. Two men were also killed in the incident. There was another vehicle which came on the scene. The driver put his foot down on the accelerator to escape from the mayhem, but he hit a motorcyclist and killed him. 5 people were killed that day. It's not uncommon in South Sudan. Nobody knows why these two sisters were killed, but it is symptomatic of the insecurity that is in the country now. That is Sister Mary Abut. That is Sister Regina Roban. May they rest in peace. This is the funeral of the sisters in Juba Cathedral after the end of that week. There seems to be little control of the various armed factions that are there. I suppose we cannot remain silent when we witness or hear of such random killing. May all who have died rest in peace. So both in Rumbek, where Sister Ole is, and in Torit Diocese, where St. Patrick's missionaries are, education is a very important part of our ministry. In both places, we encourage girls' education. St. Patrick's missionaries run a child safeguarding program in the parishes that we work in, both in Kenya and South Sudan. And in the 2 parishes we are in South Sudan, the biggest issue we are facing now in terms of education is that when girls reach the age of 14 or 15, their family wants them to be married so that the family gets a dowry from the man who wants to marry the girl. The dowry is in terms of cattle, sheep, goats. Sometimes girls come to us in the parish and school to escape from a forced marriage. It was Easter Saturday night. We were preparing for our Easter vigil. The chairman of the parish council brought a girl who had run away from a forced marriage 3 months earlier. She had been beaten by her father because she refused to be married to the man who had been given to her. We accepted her to stay in the school. The father was identified and was told his daughter is in the school. We also contacted the commissioner, who is the leading government authority in the place. Now, the law of South Sudan says every child, boy or girl, has a right to education. The law of South Sudan says no girl under the age of 18 can be forced to be married or is to be married. That is the law. So the commissioner is tasked with trying to implement that law in South Sudan. The father came to him. The father came to the school one day looking for the girl. We told him to go to the commissioner, but the commissioner was not there. The father was very angry with us and threatened us. If anything happened to the girl, we would be responsible. He came another time, but was calmer. He was calmer the second time. Again, the commissioner was missing. He finally met with the commissioner, who rang me and asked me what was he to do. I told him, since the father is forcing us to allow the girl go back to the family, we have to release her. So the father came to the parish together with the paramount chief. I brought the girl together with some teachers and members of the safeguarding committee. The paramount chief spoke to the father. He told the father that he himself had a daughter in school. He had relatives in school who were female, and his hope was that these girls would be educated, and in time, after their education, they would be able to help their families. He also told the father not to be influenced by the other men in the village who might be telling the father, why are you leaving the girl in school when she should be married and cattle would be coming to your family? The father relented, and not only would he allow the girl to stay in school, he would also pay the school fees. We were delighted. We asked the girl, how was she feeling now? The girl started crying, and she asked her father, why did he beat her? The father reacted by saying, am I not your father? Did you come down from heaven like that? We were a bit worried, but we were able to work out some reconciliation, and in the end, it worked out okay. The girl is still in school. I met the father in his village afterwards when I went for Mass, and he was asking about his daughter. This is, I suppose, a case we won. There are other cases that we have lost in terms of saving girls from school. This is a picture of 13 girls who finished their primary school in our parish earlier this year. They are the first class from that school to complete their primary education. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Tim, for that. For those heart-rending stories that you've told. And again, if you want to hear more on Tim's work, you can hear his interview with Mary Fagan from Horizons. If you go on to the Diocese of Kerry, click on Horizons, and Tim's interview with Mary Fagan was on Sunday morning, October the 10th. So thanks again, Tim. So our third and final speaker is Julianne Moran. And Julianne is a graduate from St. Patrick's College in Maynooth, and she's a member of Team Missio Ireland, raising mission awareness with children in Catholic primary schools. And Julianne has worked with the Bishops' Conference and Catholic Parent Schools Management Association, and she brings much expertise from her pastoral, renewal and faith development roles, having worked with children and young adults and parishes, pastoral workers, priests, religious, and educators. And she has a passion for people, working with people, no matter where they are on their journey. So Julianne has developed and delivered workshops, training, and other programs that focus on enabling people to discover and develop their own faith. And it was only recently, Julianne, I was flicking through magazines and I saw a beautiful article on mission for Mission Sunday in the Reality magazine that is published by the Redemptorist community. And so, you know, we have spies everywhere.
Right.
So it was a lovely article, and thanks, Julianne. So we hand over to you now.
What I'd just like to talk a little bit about this evening is who we are and what we do more than anything else, because who we are and what we do is what helps missionaries like Tim and Orla to be able to do the work that they're doing and give witness to the gospel the way that they're doing. So we're Missio Ireland, and we're formerly known as World Missions Ireland. We actually only changed our name to Missio this week officially on Monday. Previous to that, we were known as the Pontifical Mission Societies. So maybe some of you will have known us in either of those two previous names, but our new name now is Missio. We are the Pope's official charity for overseas mission, and we're part of a global network that strives to help the church share the joy of the gospel in some of the most remote corners of the world. But primarily we're helping and assisting in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And some people are probably wondering what the word Missio itself means and why did we bother changing our name at all. Just to be very brief, the biblical concept of mission is expressed by a verb to send, and it's always with God being the expression of the sender that it emphasizes that God is the one that does the sending, and the authority of God then commissioning the one being sent. And something about mission says that there's a task to be accomplished or a purpose within a framework of God's promise to God's people. So mission is actually the divine activity of sending someone to speak or to do God's will. In the Old Testament, that word was shalach in Hebrew, and it became apostolo in the Greek when the Bible was translated into Greek, and then later when it was translated into Latin, that word became missio. So missio for us is a Latin word for mission, and it just made sense for us to change our name to Missio. So there's so many Catholic charities out there, and I suppose some people will be wondering what's the difference then between each one of them. And I suppose the most popular ones that we know here in Ireland are Trócaire. I'll admit to being the exact same age as the Trócaire box. The Trócaire box was founded in 1973, just like myself. Aid to the Church in Need is another Catholic charity that I think people will know, and ourselves. I know there's more, but I suppose just to be able to briefly say there is distinct differences between us. So Trócaire is the official overseas development and relief agency of the Catholic Church in Ireland, and they are part of Caritas International, while Aid to the Church in Need is a pontifical foundation protecting the rights of Christians and supporting the suffering and persecuted church. Whereas we are then the Pope's official charity for overseas mission, part of that global network again in 120 countries, and our head offices are in the Pontifical Mission Societies in Rome. So Trócaire looks after the mitigating against natural disasters, so disaster risk reduction work. They do food security programs, advocacy work, famine appeals. Vaccine justice is a big one at the moment that Trócaire is advocating for. And then Aid to the Church in Need are providing emergency aid for Christian refugees. They might be building or rebuilding churches that have been attacked by others, or they're providing catechetical materials for Christians that are specifically in persecuted areas. Missio is providing whatever the needs are for a missionary, whether that missionary is ordained, religious or lay, in a mission diocese or parish. We're just aiming to provide through our network whatever it is that a missionary needs. So basically, wherever the church is present, Missio is there. And we're reaching out across the 5 continents to support approximately 1,100 mission dioceses around the world. A little bit again, just to say that obviously for Trócaire, most of their income comes from governmental organisations and aid agencies. Aid to the Church in Need, most of their income comes from private individuals. And for us, again, our main income comes from the parish collection on World Mission Sunday, which is going to take place this Sunday. And our income last year, there was approximately 1.6 million. So we support 4 key areas. This could be anything from a church or parish centre so that people can gather and celebrate their faith, to transportation for missionaries so that they can reach communities in remote areas. We offer funding to help build and repair infrastructure such as churches, convents, seminaries, community centres, hospitals, clinics and dispensaries. This enables local people to build their own Christian communities, and it's really local church for local people. Often mission dioceses can't provide the resources and facilities needed to assist local people who are called to religious life. Together with the kindness of the Irish faithful, we can then provide funding to support the basics like food and shelter, and the materials for their theological and pastoral studies. So by preparing tomorrow's church leaders, teachers and carers, you in fact end up supporting your support plays a really important role, because you can ensure then that those who have a religious vocation won't be turned away because of financial difficulties. Thanks to young people then, a lot of the work that I do, living out our motto, children helping children, the Missio family supports millions of the world's poorest children every year. This is done when girls and boys in approximately 120 countries, again including Ireland, offer solidarity and hope through their prayer and through their donations. I'm sure many of you remember bringing in your pennies to the mission boxes in your classrooms. So as a result of this, thousands of children's projects led by missionaries are supported. These missionaries who are living out their faiths through action know the value of every donation that they receive, and they try to help everyone they can regardless of their background or belief. And that's something that I really love about the all-embracing nature of the Catholic Church. Prayer is at the centre of all of our work. For many struggling communities overseas and the missionaries working there, knowing that people here in Ireland are praying for them definitely brings them hope. Not only do we ask people to pray for the missions overseas, but we also ask them to explore and develop their own understanding of mission. So we're trying to strive to create a vibrant community where we encourage those already engaged in the work of the church at home to support the work of the church overseas. And this is achieved through our work in schools, parishes, and with our mission teams. So World Mission Sunday is our largest appeal, and it's one of only 3 papal collections specifically for the Holy Father to use where the need is greatest, in our youngest, newest or poorest parishes around the world. The other 2 collections are Peter's Pence, which you might know, and the collection for the Holy Land. So World Mission Sunday is celebrated in every Catholic parish worldwide on the same day, and this is the absolute beauty of World Mission Sunday as far as I'm concerned. It's a true moment of universal solidarity, because on the same day all around the world, every Catholic parish gathers to pray for the universal church, and they gather to give what they can, no matter how little, to help struggling dioceses, parishes and projects. So even the poorest of parishes will make a contribution on this day in some way, and the whole lot is then added together to make up the fund for the Holy Father. So just like the gospel story of the widow's mite, their donation actually becomes as valuable as the greatest donation given on the day. And while local parish communities request assistance for their project, they are also making a contribution themselves. And our goal is to provide the building blocks for local churches to become self-sufficient in the future. So funds are then distributed promptly where the need is greatest through official church structures. We are the only Catholic charity which supports all mission dioceses throughout the world. We work local church to local church, ensuring that money goes where it's most needed. The structures are fairly simple, to be honest, and at the pinnacle of the structure is the Holy Father and his Universal Solidarity Fund. Obviously, the Pope couldn't do all this work by himself, so he uses the structure of the Missio network as his instrument for doing this work. At the end of every financial year, each Missio office reports to the Holy Father's office in Rome exactly how much money was raised in their country for the support of mission and missionaries. In May of each year, the Holy Father holds a National Assembly with the 120 national directors from each Missio office. Here, every project, every faith formation program, building program, school program, healthcare programme is considered and decisions are taken to send the funds to where the need is greatest. Each national office is then given a number of projects to fund from the monies they raise, and the funds are sent transparently by the banking structures to the local nuncio, who then sends the fund to the local bishop, and the local bishop in turn sends it to the missionary, whether that's a priest, a religious sister or brother, or a lay missionary at the end of the project. And all the way along, they're signing to confirm they've received the fund and redistributed it fully. And then the missionary at the end of the project sends us the updates and the reports and the photos. This work and witness involves everyone, because every Christian is a missionary, and our structures rely upon everyone, whether you're the Holy Father himself, someone living the single life or the married life or religious life, or a newly baptized member of the community. The work and the witness involves everybody. Here in Ireland, each one of us is directly connected to the missionary work of the Holy Father when we participate in Missio. Directly from the Holy Father, an appointment is made for a national director. And that's our national director on the right-hand side in that photo there, Father Michael O'Sullivan. And the national director has a team of people to help him in his role at national level. But each diocese also has a director for mission, and here in Kerry, that's Father Ger Godley. In recent years, we've worked really hard to set up mission teams in each diocese, and two of our mission team members in these photos include Michael O'Donnell on the right-hand side up in Tuam, and Sylvia Thompson, who's also here in Kerry. And I know it's all well and good for me to sit here tonight talking to you all about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with those who are starving, or with those who have no access to education or healthcare, to those that are living in fear of their lives. And to sit here and talk about building churches or providing motorbikes so a priest can travel 200 miles away to say mass, or training seminarians, to talk about inviting people to live life to the full when their lives are so fragile, just like Rahila and her daughter Peace, who are on the posters for our World Mission Sunday appeal this year. I can understand that it seems like priorities might be in the wrong place, but our missionaries wear lots of hats, and we have had some wonderful examples of that from both Orla and Tim this evening. But this is a both and situation, and not an either or situation. And Ireland has a very long tradition of sending people overseas, religious and lay. And these are people of great courage, strength, and witness. They walk with those they are in ministry with. They give value to the people that others believe are of no value. They afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. And they give voice and enable the voices of those who may not always be the loudest. They cannot remain silent and have to speak about what they have seen and heard. So if it's a well that is needed so the local community doesn't have to travel miles and miles just to get water, then that's what's needed. And this is the joy of the gospel in action. This is lived mission. But this also allows the same local community to then gather to pray, or for mass or another community celebration, because that aspect of their lives is no longer the same hardship that it was. So I make no apology for saying we need two things from all of you this World Mission Sunday. We need your prayers and we need your offerings. In short, we need the dough as well, because it is that makes everything happen. This is why so much effort is put into our resources for parishes here in Ireland. This is why we have mission teams in dioceses. This is why we have parish envelopes on World Mission Sunday. So please, if you can, this World Mission Sunday, dig a little deeper and just pray a little harder for our brothers and sisters in the 2/3 world that need your support.
So thank you, Julianne, for outlining the work of Missio and your role in Missio. And if I can just take one little paragraph from that little lovely article that you wrote, and just to pick up on something you said, that while mission support is important, missionaries also need spiritual support. And being on mission can be an incredibly isolating, intimidating, and at times dangerous. And on one World Mission Sunday, missionaries take great strength in knowing that we, the faithful, are keeping them in our thoughts and prayers. And this is what makes it such a special day, World Mission Sunday. And I want to thank you, Julian Missio, for the work you do, and you have sent a wonderful mission pack to every parish, okay, with the prepaid envelopes and the poster to advertise. And I know there's only one poster, so if our contribution might be to photocopy those, display them on churches where there's more than one church in a parish, or parish halls or whatever, so that we can be reminded of our duty on Sunday. So thanks again, Julian.
Thank you so much.
And if people wish, it has been such an informative evening, our three speakers, to look back over the webinar. In a few days, it will be up on the Diocese of Kerry, and you can again take time to listen and reflect on what the three people have said to us tonight. So now I think I'll hand over to Des. I can see the Q&A and chat box are very busy, Des.
Thank you, Rupert. And I'd like to thank the speakers here tonight. It certainly was an enlightening and highly interesting and confrontational night. It really makes you question the life one is living and how we're responding to the call, and are we remaining silent? Now, we've had a lot of questions in tonight, and as I speak, more and more questions are coming in. Unfortunately, due to time restraints, we are not going to be able to address all the questions, but I might maybe just address one question to each speaker. So I had a lady, Sue, from New Zealand, all the way from New Zealand, congratulating Sister Orla on her amazing work. And she just wants to know how she can help Sister Orla in her efforts over there in Suzanne. And is there an email or something that she can contact Sister Orla on?
Thank you. I'm a little bit like Julianne. Don't forget the little dough. Is that what you call it, Julianne? We have a website, and that's probably the easiest way to get more information about us. It's www.lorettorumbeck.ie. I don't know if there's a way to write it, but if you Google Loreto in South Sudan, you'll get the website connection anyway. And the details are there, and donations and all that, but we're grateful. And I think, as Julianne says, we do need the financial support. I know Tim would say the same thing, but prayers also are important as well in the context that we're into. So thank you.
Thank you, Orla. That's great. So now on to you, Tim. Comments have come in offering condolences for the sisters, and people are very touched and very taken back by the harsh conditions and those two martyrs really who gave up their lives for the Gospels and for love of the people of Sudan. So Tim, do you have any comments about what we can ask from our politicians? Get them to donate to South Sudan, something like that. Any comment of that nature?
I suppose South Sudan and Sudan, for years and years, we have been at war, or people have been at war and civil war, and maybe the world is sort of getting tired of it. That how these people, they're still fighting after so many years. Maybe the first thing I would say, don't give up. That's the first thing I would say. Secondly, I would say that I would appreciate what Mission Cora are doing. Mission Cora is an agency that helps missionaries especially in their development work in South Sudan. It is funded 75% by the government. So I would say continue supporting Mission Cora. I don't know if people are aware of that organization. Formerly it was Irish Aid, I think, and now it's called Mission Cora, and it helps missionary congregations in all over the world. And they are helping us in South Sudan, especially in education, in a boys' secondary school in another parish where St. Patrick's missionaries are. So I would say, don't give up on South Sudan, and continue to support Mission Cora in its work in helping missionaries in development work. I suppose also, I think what Orla mentioned there about vaccines and getting vaccines out to other parts of the world rather than simply thinking about vaccinating Ireland itself, because it is when the whole world is vaccinated that we will feel maybe a bit safer. So the vaccinations, it would be another thing that I would like to say, and letting vaccines available third world countries. I hate to call them third world countries, for countries who don't have access to it, and for peoples who don't have access to it. And the final thing I would say to the government, if anybody is listening, or to politicians, we have to take seriously the COP26, which is taking place in Glasgow next month, regarding climate change. I don't know if anybody is listening.
Thank you, Father Tim. So one very last question. I mean, I've had some really, really interesting questions here tonight, and there's a lot of them I would really like to address, but unfortunately, we're going to have to finish it now because we've gone way over time. But from a young person who, Melissa, who maybe Julianne, if you'd like to tackle this, might not be an easy one, but how can one join the mission abroad? Melissa spent a month in Uganda a few years ago, and she'd love to go out to Africa and on mission. So if you have any comments on what she might.
Well, two of the most popular groups that I know that organise for, I presume Melissa is a lay woman, and there is the Volunteer Missionary Movement and Via Toris Christi are two of the groups that would do training and preparation for lay people to go on mission for periods of time, anything from 2 weeks up to 5 years. So particularly Via Toris Christi, if she wants to have a Google of them, she'll find Sally Roddy there is the lady that leads Via Toris Christi, and as I said, every year they run programs preparing people to go on mission overseas. So they spring to mind straight away as a group that Melissa can look to. Okay. So I have one last question. I wasn't going to ask this. If anybody can attempt to answer this question within a minute, please do. Otherwise, we'll just wrap it up. A participant commented on education. How do we define the content of this learning pertaining to this particular culture? In other words, is it adequately enculturated? Oh, I know that sounds like an academic question.
That's always going to be a challenge when it comes to education, because education by its very nature is a Western construct. So how you can ever apply it within a culture? My answer always to people on that is it's an international playing field that we're in now. Why not give our students the same opportunity as students get all over the world? Obviously, it has to be contextualized. It has to be rooted in the local culture. So language, sports, dance, all of those activities will be very much embraced in that. Even bringing elders in, advisors, family systems, all of that has to be brought into it. But I think education by its very nature, it's very hard not to.
Yeah.
Is that under 1 minute?
That's very good, very impressive. Thank you, sister. That's great. So listen, thanks very much for taking the questions, guys, and I'll hand you back to Rupert.
Oh my goodness, we could have part 2 of this webinar, but anyway, we have to close. So left for me to thank our 3 presenters, Sister Rhoda, Father Tim and Julianne, for giving us your time this evening and sharing your stories with us. And we wish you every blessing in your challenging ministries into the future. My thanks to Ger Godley, our diocesan pastor director, for keeping us on track with the IT. And to Des for your opening prayer again and handling those questions and collating them towards the end, for taking the time to be with us this evening and for helping and joining in this webinar. So take care, God bless, and good night.
We cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard.
Para algo tan grandioso, el silencio simplemente no sirve.
如果我们的眼睛被失去所带来的泪水所充满，
残されたものの美しさを見ることができなくなるかもしれません。
In diesen unsicheren Zeiten, wer wird die gute Nachricht hören, wenn wir nicht sprechen?
Ni nani atakayesikia habari njema ikiwa sisi hatusemi?
We all stand together for our brothers and sisters, for our children, for our families.
We need to be people that do as Jesus did. Push out into the deep. Reach out to others that need our help.
Today, the voices that must be heard is not always the loudest.
Antara proyek kepunyaan buruk nan tercelu.
We stand united with our brothers and sisters.
Con fede ci uniamo, i nostri fratelli, alle nostre sorelle.
بالإيمان نقف متحدين مع إخوتنا وأخواتنا.
احنا نعيش معهم. احنا نبكي معهم.
Ami hamna sosira, ami tani sosira.
We must tell of the great things that happen when people know that God loves them.
We need to continually reach out to one another, to break down barriers, to welcome the stranger, and to offer a helping hand when our brother or sister is in need.
For we are missionary, all of us.
Karena kita adalah misionaris.
Dahil tayo'y mga misyonero.
For we are missionaries.
Ajana misionari.
Y es que somos misioneros y estamos todavía aquí.
We are still here and we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard.